really want to get into how this car really feels and how it compares to, say, a BMW M340 or M440i, or to an Audi S4 and S5. Today I'm sitting behind the wheel of a Mercedes-Benz AMG C43 coupe, and this actually happens to be one of my own personal car's main competitors. I have a BMW 340i, so this is actually a car that I cross-shopped with it, and it also compares and competes with the Audi S4 and the Audi S5. So I have actually done a video on a C300 coupe already, so I'll link that in the description box below, and that is a real in-depth look at what the C-Class coupe is all about. This will be more primarily focused on the C43 and how it compares to the M340, M440, Audi S4, Audi S5, and even a little bit to my own personal F30 generation 340i. On top of all of that, the owner of this car has asked that if you guys are interested, I put his Turo link in the description box below. So if you're in the SoCal area, check out this very exact C43 if you're interested. And if you enjoyed this video, throw it a like. And if you want to help make content like this possible, please subscribe. Without further ado, let's get out onto the road. All right, so setting off here in the C43, I'm currently in manual mode and in Sport Plus mode here in the dynamic drive mode selector, but I'm gonna pop it into Sport and I'm gonna put it into drive, let the car do some of the work to start, because first things first, I wanna talk about some of the basic specs. So a C43 coupe starts at about $59,000 and is about $64,000 as equipped here. So this car actually only has a couple of options, one of which is the exterior paint, which is lunar blue metallic. Now, I'm not usually the largest fan of dark colors on cars, but I really do like how this color is so dynamic. You get kind of a very obviously blue look in direct sunlight, and you get a practically black look in dark settings or at nighttime, so you have that range, which makes the car a little bit more fun to live with. On top of that, this car has 19-inch wheels, which I think are about a must when it comes to the look, at least. And one of the only other options this car has, well, it has leather seats, so that's one, but really, it has the AMG Performance Exhaust, which really is a must, and we're gonna get into that a little bit later in the video, but it is, you know what, let's tackle it now. It sounds really, really good. It has a very unique sound in the segment, but I cannot imagine justifying a C43 without having this exhaust as part of that package. I almost wish and think that it should have been standard. Would not be surprised to see a standard in the forthcoming new generation of C53, I believe. Other than that, this car has the red seat belts for free switched out to the black, which I think is a fantastic choice because the red's a little too loud for me personally. This is not a GT3, this is a C43, so keep it low key. You don't need red seat belts, maybe in a C63S. Now under the hood, you have a 3-liter twin turbo V6 producing 385 horsepower and 384 pound-feet of torque, which is a pretty solid amount of power. Again, I believe that the forthcoming C53 will likely have over 400 horsepower, probably utilizing a very similar, if not the exact same 2-liter 4-cylinder you could find in the A45, CLA45, the GLA45. But for the time being, you have this nice sounding, pretty potent V6, twin turbo V6, of course. And you know, if I do, even in sport, if I put my foot down, take some speed at a pretty rapid pace. Now, it does feel a bit slower in my mind, or at least seat of the pants feel, than the M340, but we'll get into that again in a little bit. So wrapping up the specs, I want to talk about the looks actually. So at $64,000-ish as equipped, with almost 400 horsepower, with almost 400 pound-feet of torque, you want an exterior look that matches, you know, the performance and sportiness of this sporty coupe. I'm not gonna call it a sports car. It's not even, you know, a C63, let alone a C63S, but it's still meant to be somewhat sporty, so the look is supposed to match, and it kind of does here. Obviously, being a coupe, you have the nice classic C-Class look. It's not my favorite in this segment personally, although the new 4 Series is really making a good case for least favorite these days. It's just a pretty simple, clean, German sporty coupe look, but you get some extra touches that help make the C43 feel special and a little bit more special than a standard C300. Now, I have reviewed a regular C300 coupe, which I can link in the description box below, as well as throw a card up to here. But this gets the former AMG style grille. So in 2019, when they facelifted the C-Class, the C63's got the Panamericana grille, and this got the old kind of one large spoke style AMG grille, and then the C300's got the old C43 grille with the stars. But the point is, you get that clean grille up front. You have the AMG Sport kind of front bumper, the same thing you can get in a C300 with the AMG Sport body kit, but you get a little bit of extra black flares and just a little bit more of an aggressive look. The only thing I don't like is you have a lot of black plastic blocking where you'd otherwise have intakes. There's no shortage of AMG badging. There's one up front. You have a bi-turbo badge on your front quarter panel. In the back, of course, you have your AMG badge. When you look on the inside, you have one your gauge cluster, your steering wheel, the floor mats. Everywhere they've plastered AMG. They want you to really believe that this is an AMG, although it's really not a real AMG. You know, we have some haters in the comments telling me, yeah, it is, yeah, it is. It's not. It doesn't have a hand-built motor, but it is sporty. So the look matches that. Again, I told you the wheels are nice. And wrapping up the looks in the back, I actually really do like the rear end of the coupes, the C-Class in general. And the C63, of course, gets that kind of extra flared out rear end, rear fenders. But you still have a pretty sporty rear diffuser here. You get quad exhaust, although it's really just, you know, single tailpipe on either side with a tailpipe finisher, part of the diffuser, but still, you get that dual exhaust. Here you don't have the AMG night package, so you still have the chrome, but again, it pops actually in contrast to this dark blue navy paint, and it makes it stand out. I like it a lot more than that previous C43 exhaust that was the same as the C300 with a little line through it. This is a bit more of an extra flair. So the looks aside, the interior is a nice place to be, basically the same as a C300 aside from the AMG badges and the fact that the steering wheel, no, I mean, actually yeah, it's basically the exact same as the C300 aside from the fact that the paddles are directly off of a C63. And they're decently nice paddles to interact with, you know, going up and down the gears here. No problems with them. They're a little chunky in the sense when it comes to paddles, if that makes any sense. They have a very clunky kind of click to them, but I know some people are a really big fan of that. But yeah, so you get the full package here. You have the Burmester sound system. You have your large central infotainment system, which is not actually so great. It does not have Mercedes-Benz's latest MBUX system, unfortunately. It has the latest command system, so it's not touchscreen, and you really want to deal with Apple CarPlay more than the actual UI itself. But nonetheless, with the sound system and with Apple CarPlay, you can really make it a pleasant place to be, ambient lighting. It's a cool car. But we've talked about the price, the specs, the looks. I really want to get into how this car really feels and how it compares to, say, a BMW M340 or M440i or to an Audi S4 and S5. So the first thing we're going to do is pop it into Sport Plus, manual mode. Sports exhaust is on. My AMG ride control is in its stiffest setting. Wow, the exhaust is just shooting fire. Nah, I wish. It's just making these beautiful pop sounds on upshift. And the tone of this exhaust is something that really stands out as compared to both the Audi S4, S5, or the BMWs. And that's because with this AMG sports exhaust, or performance exhaust, which you can toggle with a switch here in the center console, in the center tunnel, you get a really, really potent sound. Now, it has a bit of a higher pitch than both the Audi and certainly a much higher pitch than the BMW, but it adds a good sense of theater to this car, and I'm all for that. You get the pops and the bangs. It doesn't burble quite as much, definitely not as much as my personal BMW with the MPPSK exhaust, which again, I can link in the description box below or throw a card up to here. Mine just goes crazy with the burbles. This is a little bit more sound and a high pitch kind of whine, like it screams and then pops. So still very special, a very unique and distinct sound, in fact. And once again, in my opinion, a must-have in the C43. Now, I glossed over the AMG ride control, which this car has, and it's actually a 3-step suspension. You can completely turn it, into its most comfort mode, and you notice the dampers are a bit softer and it soaks up small undulations a bit better. Then you put it into the first setting and it gets a bit more sporty, and here in Sport Plus, it is in its full setting. Both lights are lit up, and it's definitely a bit stiff. I don't think it's making a dramatic impact on the handling of the car, but it's definitely stiffening up stiffening the dampers up, which can make the ride a little less comfortable, but sacrifice I'm willing to make for a little bit extra handling prowess. Now, speaking of handling, this car is all-wheel drive, 4MATIC. All C43s come in all-wheel drive. You could look at that as a huge benefit or as an unfortunate reality. I know that for some people, the fact that the BMW M340 and M440 come in both rear-wheel drive and X-Drive all-wheel drive is really appealing, and that's kind of the case for me too. I like rear-wheel drive. It's lighter and it's a little bit more theatric. It has a little bit more drama, but having all-wheel drive here means you can put the power down a good bit easier. The same thing is true of the Audi S4 and S5. I mean, the same thing is true of an all-wheel drive, just about any kind of sporty car, but it is a rear-wheel drive biased all-wheel drive system. So if you really do push the car, you can get the tail end to come out a little bit, but really it just means that if you put your foot down off the line, you're gonna pretty consistently take off, and you're gonna usually hit 60 miles an hour in the mid 4-second range, which is pretty quick in my opinion. The quarter mile happens at about 12.5 seconds, at about 110, 111 miles an hour, all very comparable to the M340, the M440, the S4, the S5. We're in Sport Plus, foot to the floor, and 60, ooh. That was one of those weird ones, and this car just feels fast, and sometimes it has that reverse effect where I look down at the speedometer and I'm actually not going as fast as I think I'm gonna be going. And it's all mated to a 9-speed automatic, which is a massive improvement over the 7-speed that was in the 2017, the 2018 C43s, even the 2016, I think it was a C450 that year. But the point is, this 9-speed is a lot better, but there are still downsides. The ZF transmissions that are in both the BMWs and the Audis are better than this, no question about it. And it's in the margins where those transmissions really win out. For instance, if you push this car to about redline at about 6,500 RPM, there's an aggressive fuel cutoff, but the transmission also ends up bogging kind of in conjunction with that fuel cutoff, and it becomes a very displeasing sensation of bog. And I can demonstrate it here. If I drop down to, let's say, second gear, about 30 miles an hour, and I gun it, and that's at 6K, and I just bog right there. So I didn't even hit redline, and it bogged at 6,200 RPM. That's disappointing, and that's something that was consistent as well in the pre-facelift C43s. It's definitely better here, but it's not as good as the S4, the S5, the M340, and the M440. I sound like a broken record, but the point is, there's gonna be strengths and weaknesses. The biggest strength of this car over those cars is the steering. Better than all of those cars, absolutely, definitely better than the BMWs, and it makes me sad to say that, but that steering rack and that EPS system in the BMWs is not too great. This one is very, very solid, and it makes, well, it's a quick rack, so it makes quick maneuvers a little bit easier. The car has a bit more of direct steering, and it's kind of surprising that this car handles better as an all-wheel drive vehicle at 4,000 pounds than a several hundred pound lighter M340, for instance, would. Now, I haven't spent a lot of time in the M440, but I have spent a good amount of time in a rear-wheel drive M340, and I think that's about similar enough to make the comparison. This feels like it handles a little bit better. That car feels a bit quicker. The interesting contrast there is that this actually feels faster. I should say that that is faster. So if I take off from the line here, from the light here, or from the stop sign here, off the line, bog, short shifting, 60. So that bog obviously killed a lot of my 0 to 60 time. Now, I haven't been able to make this car burble too much, but it is really fun to zing out. The shifts are unfortunately abrupt, and it doesn't feel like the car wants to give you full autonomy on making the decisions, and that's something that the BMWs are really good at. If you put the BMWs into Sport Plus mode, they don't even shift up at redline. They'll bounce off the rev limiter, and this is doing almost the complete opposite of that. It's actually cutting off fuel before the visual red line that I see on the tachometer, and that's disappointing. And that's also something that doesn't feel very performance car-esque, you know? Like, you want to have control when you're in a car that's meant to be an AMG. I know, again, this is not a real AMG, but you figure people are buying this because it's a little bit sportier than your typical C300, and to bridge the gap between this and between that and a C63, you want to have autonomy, and it makes me think maybe a C63 doesn't offer you a full range of autonomy, and maybe that power can kind of hide that a little bit better. But with sub 400 horsepower, I'm easily able to exploit the flaws in the transmission and the drivetrain in general. But for the sake of giving it a shot, we're going to take it out of manual mode. We can rip it off the line right here. Brake boosted a little. Okay, so that took off much faster, shifting on its own. There's 60. Wow, yeah. Wow, that was significantly faster than it was in manual mode. Holy cow. Okay, so that kind of answers that. You might want to leave the C43 in automatic mode, let it do the shifting for you, because it does a better job shifting itself than it'll let you shift, or itself, whatever. It does a better job shifting itself than it'll ever let you do. Still doesn't make any sense. The point is, the car should shift. In this particular case, it does a much better job. And yeah, that was surprising, and that says a lot about this car. It doesn't want you to have full control, and it's not that the BMW does either these days, and the Audi certainly is the least fun of the bunch, but I like a car that really knows what it is. And the one thing that I don't like about this car is it gives off the illusion that it's kind of what I think or thought it would be, which is an awesome, gnarly sports coupe that you can rip and you can have a great time in. And, you know, take me back to my old E92 days, you know, a car with a real sporty coupe feel that gave you some genuine control without having to be a full top of the range performance model. That's not what this is. It is ultimately a comfy, cozy, if I throw it into comfort mode, very comfortable actually, almost Grand Tourer with a sporty flair. And that reminds me more of an Audi S5, not that that's a bad thing, but I don't think this is the kind of car that's going to genuinely satisfy car enthusiasts. Again, I'm not saying that even these days an M340 or M440 properly will. It's the unfortunate reality that there's not a lot of cars out there in this price segment anymore that will do exactly that, which is satisfy an enthusiast. I think this is better for somebody who wants something a little bit more appealing than your typical C300, with a bit more power, with a bit more sound and flair, but not necessarily all that much more dynamically capable. The brakes are a bit better. The AMG ride control does make things a bit better, but a bit is just not enough. And other than that, you know, it's a solid car. I'm excited to see what the C53 will provide, but I'm afraid that going towards a extremely high-strung four-cylinder, I know that it's currently out in these other 45 level cars, but I don't have a ton of experience with it myself. I'm just afraid that that's going to only exacerbate a lot of the issues I have, which is that this car will just feel very on edge and even less controllable than what you'd again like, which is a proper NA balanced car. So we're moving in a direction that's interesting, and this is a very precarious time for the car industry until we reach what seems to be an inevitable full electrification. But until that point, I was happy to get behind the wheel of a twin turbo proper V6 motor and see how well the car attached to it does, and it's done all right with the all-wheel drive with the 9-speed auto, and it's left me pleased but not blown away. I think I'm more impressed with the overall vibe of this car and the overall feel that it provides more than I am with the pure dynamic capability or performance. And on that note, if you guys enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. New videos are dropping every single week on Fridays. Comment down below, let me know what you guys want to see. I'll do my best to make it happen. And as always, this is Rio. Peace out.